And we're coming to you live from the Built Ford Tough Studio. It's Boomer Esiason and Greg Giannotti, Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network and wherever you are on the Odyssey app. Good Friday morning. It is not a football Friday. It is a regular Friday, but it is a feel-good Friday no matter what time of year it is, as we get you ready for a Super Bowl week next week of Super Bowl 56. There's already some redecoration that is happening in this studio this morning and also yesterday, as this story that we learned about earlier in the week has continued to grow with the Brian Flores lawsuit. You saw a lot of people saying, hold on a second. Hold on a second. We're not going to let this narrative grow. This is bullcrap, including the Broncos, the Giants, the Browns, the Dolphins, and Stephen Ross. I knew something serious was going on, Boomer, when I saw the Giants put out that press release with the helmet in the grass. That's when you know something serious. It's a picture of a helmet in the grass, and it says statement from the Giants. And I said, whoa, helmet in the grass means something is serious, and I clicked on it, and boy, they went after Brian Flores. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Jay. And these are all expected. Responses from the people that are, have the allegations against them are obviously going to dig in now. From the NFL to its member clubs to the individuals like John Elway, are basically going to fight back. So Brian Flores had to know that, if you're going to go down this road, you're going to go down a scorched earth policy road, that there's going to be kickback, and there will be. And these are all normal things that are going on between two parties that are fighting over the interpretation of how things went down. Bill Belichick is still going to be a very big person in this mix. I would imagine that the lawyers will definitely call him and want to get him on tape and want to find out exactly what's going on here and how he found out, who he knew from, when did he know it. The thing that the Giants put out yesterday was basically a timeline refuting everything that Brian Flores is claiming. So they're saying that the hiring of Brian Daboll didn't happen until after all the candidates were interviewed, including Leslie Frazier and himself, and that and they've published the timeline. They put the timeline out there and they put an explanation with it. So that's the court of public opinion, and that's expected. And what Stephen Ross is saying is expected. What John Elway is saying is expected. What the NFL put out initially was ridiculous because it was like a half an hour after the initial lawsuit was filed. So here we go. This is now we're in step 3 of this thing. So you had the initial allegations. You have the responses publicly to the allegations. You have the embarrassing interviews that were given by Brian Flores and his attorneys to highlight all the misgivings that Brian felt, and then these are the responses. So all of this stuff is normal, and right now where we are is in the court of public opinion.
Which really is not going to matter if we get some legitimate discovery and evidence as to what Brian Flores is alleging. Now, the Broncos thing, you can throw that out. There is absolutely no way, unless Brian Flores...
But again, We're in the court of public opinion, so now
you can't prove it, though.
I know, but you're a public judge right now.
Oh, okay.
And we're talking about it. We're giving opinions because we see it from our side, and we see it, through our eyes, I should say. But I would imagine that Brian's lawyers will have, Coach Flores' lawyers will have an answer for everything that we think we see, as opposed to the things that they believe actually happened to Coach Flores.
Sure, but I'm just trying to take it a step further, and what can you prove? And the Broncos one is very difficult to prove. And I don't know what happened there, and I don't think we're ever going to be able to find out. But you can't prove to me that John Elway was hungover that day. I mean, he's going to say he was tired. They were flying around. There was only a small window that he could talk to Brian Flores. He did. It was a legitimate candidacy. Brian Flores felt differently. We're never going to be able to get to the bottom of that one. However, there could be evidence in the Giants case and the Dolphins case that could prove what Brian Flores is saying, and that's where this thing is going to get very, very interesting. And the same thing with the Browns and Hugh Jackson, who was on the station yesterday, and he talks in circles more than any person I have ever heard in my life.
Could you imagine him being your head coach?
Oh, my God, no.
I mean, he'd be a billionaire, by the way, if, in fact, he did receive any money for losing games like he's claiming. I think he's claiming. I'm not really sure what he's claiming.
Exactly. That's the point. I couldn't figure it out either. And I'll give credit to Tiki and Tierney because they kept asking him to try to get to exactly what he was trying to say. But I think what he was saying was that there were incentives in his contract somewhere that he wasn't even aware of, that if the team was like the youngest roster, the team was in statistical categories towards the bottom of the league, if the team had X amount of draft choices that were better than the other teams in the division or the other teams in the league, then he would get bonus for that.
All right, so we would have to see that contract, and if he would have that contract.
He says he has proof of
it. All
right,
so we have to see all that,
right.
And the question will be, will he join Brian Flores in a class action suit? Remember, this is an open-ended suit where any disgruntled former coach who feels like he's been wrong can join in. And I think if I were Brian Flores, I would hope that would happen.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go down this road, this path by yourself. And I think, for Brian, like I said yesterday, it takes a big set of you-know-what to do what he's doing and to try to, illuminate some of the, I don't want to say I guess I'll say the biases that he feels like have been thrown his way. And again, I listened to the station yesterday and everything else. I still go back to saying that, this is one individual who had a horrific experience in his eyes. We don't walk in his shoes. We don't know exactly all the things that he dealt with down there in Miami.
Right.
Who was fired after the team came back and was in the mix all the way until the end of the season for a playoff berth. They ended up with a winning record. The defense has gotten better. He believes, I would imagine, he's hamstrung by his quarterback because, the quarterback doesn't have the strongest of arm and maybe really accurate, but maybe there's other things that are going on there that he wasn't happy with. The draft choices, trying to get Tom Brady, trying to get Tom Brady. I mean, all these different things. So there's all this stuff out there right now. But again, I go back to this is one man's individual experiences that basically set him off. And if my name were dragged through the mud like it was down in Miami after they fired him about how he couldn't get, connect with people, you didn't have good relationships, wasn't a relationship. I'm like, what? And, what are we talking about here? If you fire him, you just let him go. You don't have to explain unless you have to explain to him why you're firing him. But once you start putting that out in the public domain, now all of a sudden in his world, he's going to feel all those arrows coming his way. So I understand, again, exactly why he's doing what he's doing. I give him an amazing amount of credit for being out there on his own doing this. But then again, he's got to realize he's going to be getting pushback from all the people that he's accusing of doing wrong.
Yeah, and I think that another issue with this as we try to further the story and we're now seeing what the next step is Brian Flores did this not only to show the world what happened to him, but to try to force some change in what is going on in the NFL. And I don't know if there is a clear path to change, especially when now we're getting into this didn't happen. How dare you? That was a gross miscalculation of the truth, or whatever these statements are saying, and everybody's just getting angry about it. And then the whole idea of what this lawsuit was put out there to do gets lost. Will things get better when it comes to the hiring process of minorities in the NFL because of this lawsuit? And so far, because we've been eating this topic for 3 days, my answer is no. It's not. Yeah, but it's just getting people pissed off.
It's getting a lot of people pissed off. And the other thing, too, is that, remember, the Rooney Rule doesn't require anybody to hire anybody. Mm-hmm. All it requires is that a team interview minorities outside of their building. And, that was the question for me regarding the Giants. When did they interview Brian Flores, and when did they interview Leslie Frazier, and when did they sign the contract with Brian Daboll? And they laid it out as to what their timeline is. Mm-hmm. So in the court of public opinion, okay, we can either believe Brian Flores or we can believe the New York Giants. And Brian Flores is basically saying that, the job was already given to Brian Daboll according to Bill Belichick, who, according to the Giants, doesn't represent the Giants.
Yeah.
So, this is like we're going to go round and round and round with this. And I guess the discovery phase or process, if they get to that point, is going to be the, that will be the deciding factor as whether or not there is damages that will be paid or not. The other thing, too, is that Brian Flores is still in the running for this Houston job.
Yeah, which is really, really interesting. And I brought that up the second that the lawsuit dropped. I said he was in the mix for New Orleans. He was in the mix for Houston. But seeing some of the comments yesterday from these teams that were fighting against the lawsuit, it did seem to me like Brian Flores probably is not going to get a job right now.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd want to. I don't know if you'd want to hire somebody that's embroiled in what he's embroiled in. Because,
and they're already embroiled in stuff in Houston with Deshaun Watson. Do they want more embroilment?
Well, the question will be, I wonder if Houston's still thinking that maybe Deshaun Watson would come back and play for them if Brian Flores was the coach.
Yeah.
Because initially Brian Flores was said to have wanted Deshaun Watson, in Miami, and that, this was one of the reasons why Deshaun Watson wanted to go to Miami.
Yeah.
Was because of Brian Flores. So there's a lot of that stuff that's out there as well. Look, it's a shame that this all has to come these 2 weeks prior to the Super Bowl because, the guys that are playing in the Super Bowl should be able to, just enjoy the memories that they're about to make.
I know.
And go through and feel like what it means to go to the Super Bowl. So that part of it, and I just hope that the players don't decide to do something, that it's their moment. It's their moment to enjoy. And I don't want them doing anything. I don't want the halftime show doing anything. It's a standalone event. It's a celebration of what has been a great season, an amazing season. 2 seasons back-to-back with COVID dealing through these teams and all the teams dealing with COVID and coming through all of that. And we all know next week is going to be the story again. This is going to be the front pages because ultimately the commissioner will give the state of the league. The league is, going through a lot of different things, whether it be this lawsuit, the John Gruden lawsuit. I mean, could you imagine at any point at the beginning of last season that you thought that there would be 2 head coaches that would be suing the league?
No. And also, more Dan Snyder stuff is out in the public eye, and he had to release a statement defending himself again.
There's no way to defend himself.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
He's and by the way, the fact that he was front and center in a photo shoot for the Commanders uniforms, did you see him?
Yes.
I couldn't believe that. It just shows how unbelievably out of touch that man is, that he's sitting there with the Commanders gear and the helmet like, hey,
so
look
stupid.
at me.
The whole thing is so stupid.
What a clown.
And then, of course, yesterday they had 2 of the victims who basically brought a suit against them in front of a House panel testifying as to what happened and what went on. And remember, the NFL is basically, under a law that allows them to essentially run a monopoly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the antitrust laws that, they're allowed to operate the way that they operate. And it's one of the reasons why Congress always gets involved with professional sports, because those antitrust laws extend to a number of the leagues. So, again, that's another crappy look. I can imagine a reporter next Friday saying, "Excuse me, Commissioner, how in the world is Daniel Snyder still owning the Washington Commanders?"
Right.
How that's so weird to say that, but how are you allowing this to happen?
Yeah, and his answer, my guess, his answer would be something along the lines, we did a very thorough investigation. There was hefty penalties, unprecedented penalties for that organization. He was removed as the president or whatever CEO title that he had. He is no longer running the team. That's going to be his answer.
Well, here's the deal. So that team wants a new stadium because their stadium is dilapidated. They're not doing anything to improve it. It's falling apart. It's a horrific stadium situation. It's out in Maryland. He and the Washington Commanders want to build a new stadium within D.C. proper, and I think they want to put it over there by where the Nationals play. There's no way that the D.C. politicians are going to support him trying to get a new stadium down there. And it's one of the big things that Roger Goodell has done for the owners of the team. He's the commissioner. He's the one that's got to fight the legal battles, the political battles, the public relations wars when it comes to things like what happened with the Washington Commanders. And they want a new stadium. And they're not going to get one under the current ownership. They're just not. I don't believe they will. This is just my personal take on what I think is a disgrace of a football team.
And with that disgrace
Organization,
of a
I should say. It has nothing to do with Ron Rivera. It has nothing to do with the players. This is ownership, and this is basically what ran amok under Bruce Allen and obviously Daniel Snyder. So I don't know. It's an ugly situation down there. That's all I do know.
Yeah, and it's been an ugly situation for the NFL this week, but the popularity of the game has never been higher, and I don't think that these things hurt it. I really don't. There's going to be just as many people, if not more people, watching the Super Bowl this year. The numbers that you guys had and Fox had for championship weekend were absolutely astronomical. So this game is at the height of its popularity. It continues to grow, and even though there's many, many hurdles and some negativity and some headlines that they don't want to see, it's not hurting the bottom line.